At this time, I would like to call the Louisiana State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education Board meeting to order. May I have a roll call?
Ms. Beebe?
Present.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
Mr. Bennett is here. Ms. Bofi?
Here.
Ms. Bofi is here. Ms. Bradford?
Here.
Ms. Bradford is here. Ms. Dastug?
Here.
Ms. Dastug is here. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Garvey is here. Mr. Gio?
Here.
Mr. Gio is here. Ms. Hill?
Present.
Ms. Hill is here. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Lee is here. Ms. Orange-Jones?
Present.
Ms. Orange-Jones is here. Mr. Romer?
Here.
Mr. Romer is present. All 11 board members are here. You have a quorum, Madam President.
What a nice way to get started with the new board. We have 100% attendance. Let's go to the first item, please.
Actually, item number 3 is approval of the agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Mr. Garvey to approve the agenda as presented, a second by Ms. Bradford. Is there any objection to approving the motion to approve the agenda? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item.
Item 4, consideration of appointment of the State Superintendent of Education.
Okay, is there a motion on this item? Mr. Romer.
I move the board waive the requirement that the State Superintendent of Education hold the same qualifications as are adopted by rule by the board for the position of superintendent of a city, parish, or other local public school board, and appoint John C. White as the State Superintendent of Education effective immediately.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Mr. Bennett. Any discussion on this motion, board members? I'm going to start, I'm going to assume that most members might have a comment, so I'm going to start with Ms. Beebe, and then we'll work our way around the table. Ms. Beebe.
Okay, thank you, Madam President, and I do want to establish, do we have timelines, time constraints?
That is at the discretion of the chair. I tend to give a wide latitude to fellow board members. One rule, Robert's Rule of Order, and I'll say this because we have new members and this is our first meeting, is that allows that you can speak 2 times to a motion. I am pretty firm on that, but I'll give you the time you need this morning, Ms. Beebe, to speak to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dastu. I want to start off by saying that during the last 6 months, I have had the opportunity to speak to my constituents in District 3. So today, I must speak in favor of an open and transparent interview process for the selection of State Superintendent of Education for the following reasons. During the last 6 months, I've heard choice being touted as what is essential to reform efforts in Louisiana and beyond. This is our opportunity as BESE members to model choice in the selection of a state superintendent. Why not apply choice to this situation? Failure to do so will send out the wrong message to our children and to the public. In my role as a personnel administrator in a school district, I am required to adhere to legislation and policies that require the advertisement of positions. Certifications are required as outlined in Bulletin 746, and they must be followed. I am responsible to ensure that those certifications are in place. Local school boards have been criticized time and again for interfering in the hiring process. Yet Governor Jindal and out-of-state groups are dictating who is best qualified to lead our state's education system. Granted, BESE currently has no policy that requires the advertising of state superintendent, but it is the responsible and the right thing to do. I think our first order of business should be the adoption of a policy that does not allow a waiver. Rather, we should establish high standards for the educational leader of our state. And I'm going to cite reasons why I strongly believe in the need to conduct a national search. Number 1, it is the right thing to do. A fair, transparent, and competitive national search to find the best candidate is important to assure the public that competence and not politics was used to make the selection. Number 2, it's time. There has not been a national search for a state superintendent in almost 20 years. Number 3, it's a big investment. A previous superintendent had an annual compensation package as high as $430,000, inclusive, of course, of travel, housing, etc. Now, over a 4-year period, this is almost $2 million. and it's a $2 million investment in our state's education leadership. So shouldn't we be willing to spend about 1 or 2% of that potential investment in a national search? I'm told that there's no money to do a national search. I personally believe there are capable individuals in Louisiana who can lead us in responsible education reform and who can compete with the best education talent in the country. And they, along with other potential national candidates, deserve the opportunity, the chance to prove that they are indeed best for the job. Number 4, credibility. Let's talk about credibility. If the new superintendent is to be taken seriously, if BESE is to be taken seriously, if the governor and the legislature are to be taken seriously on education reform, we have to assure the public that we put politics aside and that we used all of our resources to make the best selection we could possibly make. Now, reasonable minds can differ on the qualifications, but using the 7 criteria from past superintendent evaluations, I have some concerns regarding the governor's nominee. Number 1, a proven track record of success in administration. 5 years in New York City in a variety of positions over the course of that 5-year period, and less than a year in the recovery school district does not prove that to me. Number 2, a demonstrated ability to achieve positive results. While his efforts in New Orleans may be promising, they remain to be proven given the short amount of time he has been there, about 10 months. RSD, ladies and gentlemen, ranked 69 out of 70 districts. Number 3, credibility in his current position. A national search would give more credibility to that individual. The lack of a national search would forever rob one of the credibility that a superintendent needs. Number 4, a proven record of team building. I will concede that he may have the potential to be a team builder, but the word proven is not a word that I am confident in using to describe his team building based on my research. Number 5, proven decision-making skills. Again, given his limited experience, his decisions remain to be proven. Number 6, the ability to work effectively with the legislature and executive branches of the government, education, business and civic organizations. He may have the potential to do this, but the lack of experience concerns me. Outstanding interpersonal and communication skills. I will concede, while I know very little about him, unlike Governor Jindal, Mr. White did reach out to me shortly after my election victory to congratulate me. To sum it up, is this candidate so great that we can credibly tell the world there is no need to invest in a national search, that Louisiana is too poor, we don't have the money to conduct a national search? Can we credibly tell the world that the candidate's achievements and experiences are so stellar that no other options need to be considered? Ladies and gentlemen, credentials and experience do matter because they are objective evidence of a candidate's qualities, and the governor's nominee lacks a great deal of both, in my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Beebe.
Therefore, I want to offer a substitute motion to conduct a national search, one that is open and transparent and allows all who want to participate in the process. Thank you, Ms. Daston.
Sorry, Ms. Beebe. Okay, we have a substitute motion by Ms. Beebe. Is there a second to that motion? The motion fails for lack of a second. The primary motion to appoint is back before the board for consideration. Is there anyone else that would like to comment at this point?
Yes.
To the motion. They'd like to speak to the motion. I'll go all over. So,
I don't have to speak to the motion.
Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones, are you ready?
No.
Oh.
No. Go ahead.
Okay, Ms. Hill.
Yes. I'm not speaking to the motion, but I'm speaking.
Well, then, at this point, we're speaking to the motion. If you would like if you would like a point of personal privilege, we'll do that toward the end of this motion. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this motion?
Uh,
Okay, Mr. Lee and then Ms. Bradford.
Wisdom would tell me that I should keep quiet, but I learned from my other former BESE members that sometimes you just say what you think. I think that we're in a unique situation. I think that with me having worked in education for longer than Moses, that I've seen lots of change come and go. I've seen lots of personalities and lots of people come and go. I understand and relate to the education family. And I believe that people are conscientious. I believe they want children to learn. I think all teachers want to be effective teachers. But we simply are in a different age today. We've seen lots of change occur in the last several years in Louisiana and nationwide with education reform. We have probably the strongest accountability system in the nation, and that didn't happen easily. It happened with determined people and decisions made by this board that were not the easiest decisions to make. We are in the midst of education reform. I don't see that turning back. If we're going to be competitive with the rest of the nation, we've got to do a better job of satisfying the citizens of this state that education can be more effective in the future than what it has been in the past. People just simply want their children to get a good education. They don't know how, they don't know what direction, what way it should occur, but they're not pleased with what we've had up to this point, or up to the time we started the reform. So I'd like to see the controversy behind us. I'd like to see us move forward together. Certainly it would be the norm to have a national search and find out who's out there that might be interested and who might be capable. But I do believe we have a quality candidate, and one that's very unusual in many ways. I don't know Mr. White, not really. I've spoken to him, but I don't really know him. But I am impressed with what I've seen. I'm impressed with his service with the RSD. I'm impressed with the fact that he is certified as a teacher, and that's what other educators are. I'm impressed with the superintendent leadership training that he's had, that very few candidates would have. So while there might be somebody out there that could do a good job, it looks to me like we really have a quality candidate that's before us. I just think more than anything, it's time for Louisiana to work together to improve education. I'd like to see the education family on board. I'd like to see the bickering stop. I think we've had too much of that up to this point. And these would be big shoes to fill, but I would trust and hope that with the approval of Mr. White, that he would see the importance of everybody complimenting each other, supporting each other, not blaming anybody for where we are, but interested in working together to improve the learning experiences in this state. Therefore, I support the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Bradford.
You know, some of the most demoralizing and crippling words are, "We have never done it this way before." But the reality is, like Mr. Lee has said, this is a new era. And Superintendent White has devoted his career to education. He's been in public education from every angle and served very well at all that he's done. He began as a classroom teacher in a troubled school in New Jersey. And then he became a professional development coach, really providing mentor to teachers. For the last 5 years before he came to us, he was recruited to serve New York City, the nation's largest school district, where he served as a senior administrator. I think that provided a lot of experience. And then he has been serving as a superintendent in Louisiana for the Recovery School District, which is the state's most challenging school district. And during that time, he has made great progress, and he's turned his critics into believers. So I think it's without question that Mr. White has demonstrated talent and a relentless commitment to serve the best interests of children. And so I want to agree with Mr. Lee that it is time for us to all pull in the same direction in Louisiana. And that direction is in the benefit and the well-meaning interest of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. Are there any other comments from board members on the motion that's on the floor? To the motion. Ms. Bothy.
Thank you. As an educator and a mother whose child will be entering Louisiana's public schools this coming fall, he'll be in kindergarten, I am interested and excited about Louisiana's future for education. The one thing that I wish is that the teachers across the state had an opportunity to sit down with Mr. White and talk to him. I've had a lot of conversations about education with people over the last few months, and I can tell you that my conversation with Mr. White was the most memorable and also the most inspiring. For anyone who doubts, he understands what it's like to be in the classroom while also having a vision for what Louisiana's education system can possibly look like. So as an educator and a mother, I would like teachers to know that. I would also like parents to know that. And I think the issue that we need to talk about here is time. And time is very important. We have a governor and a legislature that's very interested in education reform, and the Department of Education and BESE will be best represented when we have a leader in place who is leading that education reform, as opposed to allowing other people to take it over. So I support Mr. White's appointment. I'm excited about Mr. White's appointment, and I look forward to us moving forward as an education family, thank you, Mr. Lee, and making sure that we're all working for our students.
Thank you, Ms. Bothy. Mr. Gillo?
Yeah.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Nastu, I'm a new member of the board, and I'm a businessman, and my constituency who elected me was pretty clear that they wanted that background represented on the board, and as a business background who's been involved in public education, I'm looking for, in the superintendent's position. Ms. Beebe outlined the qualifications. I've looked at those. But at the same time, I know that we need proven leadership skills. I know we need someone with a proven ability to work with diverse groups to bring consensus so we can move forward, as Mr. Lee and others have demonstrated. Obviously, it's apparent that we need somebody that's passionate about education. We need somebody with the ability to vision and to plan. Someone who will enhance the good things in the system that are working, but find innovative ways so that our children in failing schools can receive a quality education. So when I was elected, I sat down with Mr. White. I knew that he would be the one that would be nominated. It was pretty apparent that was going to take place. And I came away similar to Ms. Bothy in the conversation. I was extremely impressed with his leadership, his passion, what he's done in Orleans in that regard, his background. And I specifically asked him about my district relative to how are you going to approach good schools that are working? How are you going to approach failing schools? And I came away with that very pleased with the conversation, and also in talking with others that have worked with him. He's got a great reputation on consensus, and we need to get moving. We've got a legislative session ready to go. We don't need to miss a year in this process, so I fully support him as superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Gillo. Mr. Garvey?
Yes, I'd like to take a brief moment to mention some of the observations I've had of Mr. White and his work in the Recovery School District down in Orleans Parish. which I think also supports the motion that's on the table today. I've seen Mr. White accomplish three things in particular that, before he came here, were described as impossible. The first one is putting together a joint application process for all of the parents across New Orleans to apply to all of the Recovery School District schools by using one application instead of going through 20 or 30, however many schools they were interested in applying to. That was described, as I said, as impossible to accomplish, but it has been accomplished in the short period of time that Mr. White has been here. The second issue is the repairing and fixing of the schools in New Orleans. Before Mr. White came, there were several different plans that were put on the table for repairing schools throughout New Orleans using the FEMA money that we had. Not one of those plans had a plan to fix all of the schools that were going to be used by the students in Orleans Parish. But Mr. White has put on the table, and the public has accepted his plan that will fix all of the schools that are going to be used by the students in Orleans Parish. That was described as impossible to do on many occasions. Thirdly, he has brought together many groups that previously had been fighting with each other, brought them together to work together on common issues in trying to improve the school system in Louisiana. And this goes to the point that Mr. Lee was making. Not all of the fighting is over, but many of the groups that previously it had been described as impossible to get them to work together, Mr. White has brought together. And I think that those three examples are powerful reasons why we should support the motion that's on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey. Any other board members want to speak to the motion? Okay, Ms. Jones. Or Ms. Orange Jones. How do I?
Orange Jones.
Ms. Orange Jones.
As I campaign this fall, I heard from many who would have liked a national search to choose a superintendent. And upon my election, I had many conversations with board members, the governor's office, about such a search. And at first, I was incredibly disappointed that there was not more will across the board to actually have a more extensive search. Although, as I've gotten to know what is actually ahead and what we as a state face ahead, I do feel a tremendous sense of urgency to move quickly so that this year is not a year spent not being able to focus on the objectives of putting our children first. I think we have a tremendous opportunity as a state ahead of us. And I think we have a candidate in Mr. White who is capable. I think he is qualified. I think he is a proven educational leader. I think he is focused on children. And I think he is the right next leader to take this process forward, to take this state forward. And so while if we had more time, a selection would be ideal, we have to look at the constraints ahead of us and recognize that we have a leader who absolutely has the criteria and the capability, and I say that as an educator, to move forward this state, and with that, he has my endorsement.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Rumber, do you have any comment?
I'll only add, and perhaps, are we going to take public comment as well?
I am. I was going to let board members speak to this first, and then I'm going to go ahead and Ms. Hill, go ahead and let you make your comment after, and then we'll move on the motion. So.
Sure. I'll be brief. It's an exciting time in our state, given the challenges that we have, and those challenges are opportunities. A chance to turn our state around, a chance to lift our kids. I'll remind Mr. White that there's a sense of urgency, and I felt that in my conversations with Mr. White and detailed discussions with him on his vision for our state and education. And at the centerpiece of every conversation I've had with him, he's talked about the kids. And he's talked about the 235,000 kids that are below grade level in our state right now. At the focus and the essence of every conversation I've had with him, it's been about the kids. I've been impressed with, prior to meeting him, I was impressed with his credentials coming from the largest school system in the country. But since actually working with him in the past 8 months and understanding his vision more clearly and how I believe it aligns with the vision of both our legislature and our governor and this BESE board, I think we're very aligned in that regard. And then in terms of his ability to carry out the task, running the RSD is no simple task, and Mr. Garvey outlined three things that he was able to accomplish in a very short period of time. And it does not come without its challenges. It comes with great challenges. So I would only say that, Mr. White, we look forward to working with you. You have a tremendous burden on your shoulders, but I appreciate that you take it on as an opportunity. I would say our state, over the next 4 years, will make more advancements in teaching every child, regardless of race, regardless of wealth, regardless of background, of providing every child with a high-quality education. And every conversation I've had with Mr. White, that's what we've talked about. How do we provide every child, regardless of where they live, regardless of their parents, regardless of where they stand today, how do we provide every child the best opportunity for a high-quality education? I expect the next 4 years, that will be the question that we get a chance to ask ourselves, and the policies we get to implement. How do we touch every child and make their life better and improve their state of living? The single most important criteria in determining the quality of life is someone's education level. And in a state that currently has 235,000 kids below grade level, I would say those 235,000 kids deserve our utmost attention, and they deserve it today, not 3 months from now, not 9 months from now. They deserve it today. So I would recommend and ask this board to approve this motion, and I'd ask Superintendent White, let's begin the work that needs to be done to make sure we have a legislative package in place that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Romer. Ms. Hill.
Yes, as a newly elected official for District 8, and all due respect to Mr. White and all the board members, the reason why I wanted to speak today, because one of the things that I had to remember as I cast my vote today is my constituents in the community. When I took upon and decided to run for this office, I had to listen to the people and to listen to what their needs were. With the background in social work and understanding the dynamics of my district, I had to understand their needs. And one of the concerns that I have as I speak today is that I promised my constituents, I promised the people of District 8 that I would come back to them as their representative to give them information, and as far as including them in my decision-making process. And this morning I did have the opportunity to meet with Mr. White. I was impressed with you, Mr. White. I was impressed with where you want to take the education system here in Louisiana. But I have to stay true to myself and to my community, and I have to stay true to the people who elected me as a representative of District 8. And just to say that, Mr. White, I know you're going to do great things if appointed to this position. And one of the things that I have to remember, and I can never forget who put me in this position. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hill. I think all board members that had an opportunity, who wanted an opportunity to speak. We don't do rebuttals, Ms. Beebe. You have an opportunity.
I would have a follow-up.
Okay, once I make sure all board members who wanted to speak the first time, then I'll come back to you. Thank you. But we don't do rebuttals. Mr. Bennett, did you want to speak?
Well, it's just about all been said, hasn't it, Mr. White? Listening and watching Mr. White through the months he's been here with RSD, I know that he's passionate and resolute about what he wants to accomplish. I also have seen him be conciliatory and collaborative. I think he is really big into consensus building, which is what's very much needed in this state at this time. I've also had the opportunity to sit down with him, and as I told one of the board members after my meeting, I think we have someone who's going to lead with a cool head and a warm heart. I think that's not a hot head and a cool heart, was it? It was a cool head and a warm heart. And that's what I think we have, and I think I think right now he is the person for the job, and I support him completely.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Board members, if you'd like to speak to the motion a second time, we'll start now, and I'll start with Ms. Beebe.
Thank you, Ms. Dastus. I just think we're, board members, I've listened to your comments, and I just feel that we're ignoring the possibility that there are many dedicated educators in Louisiana and beyond who pay their dues. And yes, Mr. White, you may be effective, but I'm as a BESE member, I haven't been given a choice. This is my first meeting with Mr. White. I'm not as fortunate as some of you who did have the pleasure of meeting with him and having the discussions. But I, too, have a responsibility to my constituents, and first and foremost to the children of Louisiana. And I distinctly remember a conversation I attended the December committee meeting when the student BESE member indicated his desire to see a selection for an open process for state superintendent, that person having the credentials outlined in the bulletin. And I respect this young man, and he may be about 16 years of age, but he has the maturity and the responsibility to know that leadership is extremely critical in education reform efforts. And I think a leader has to have followers. And I think we have a responsibility as BESE members to have an open and transparent process. We don't know who else is out there. And once again, I have to say, it's insulting to me as a resident of Louisiana to imply that we don't have capable individuals in Louisiana. I'm a 27-year experienced educator, and I have a number of credentials. I am continuing to earn credentials. Many other educators are working towards enhancing their abilities and they have desires and aspirations to move up in leadership positions. And I think today we're sending out the wrong message to these individuals.
Thank you, Ms. Beebe.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'm
Thank you.
sorry, that's the way I feel.
Thank you, Ms. Beebe. Anybody else
Madam Chair?
feel the need to speak to the motion? Yes.
I think we need to get the record straight on Mr. White's age.
Mr. White, how old are you?
I don't think you're 16.
I was talking about this.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
He does look awfully young, but I don't think he's quite 16. Okay, let's, at this point, if no further board members have any further comments, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege and would like to recognize a person who served on this board and who is really, I think, can take a lot of credit for helping put Louisiana where they are on the education reform front, and certainly in the accountability area. So I'd like to take this moment to recognize Leslie Jacobs, who's joined us today. At this point, we're going to go ahead and allow public comment. It's going to be very brief. We'll allow 2 minutes for everyone who has submitted a public comment card. And we'll start with Lee Barrios, and then we'll follow with Lee Meyer, just so you know who's up next. 2 minutes. You see, Ms. Barrios, I did call on you first.
Thank you. Lee Barrios, retired National Board Certified Teacher from St. Tammany Parish, Information Coordinator for the National Save Our Schools movement, founding member of Coalition for Louisiana Public Education. BESE, at the direction of Governor General, obviously intend to continue the destructive transformation of the public education system in the name of reform without the input and direction of highly qualified, experienced Louisiana educators. Mr. White has made it clear that under the direction of Governor General, he will ignore the clear needs of our children, our communities, and our economy for an open system of public education that accepts and serves everyone and offers true choice, which includes the opportunity to be served by a high-performing school in their own community. Keep in mind that every single public school system in the state except 2 have managed to maintain their positions or have even raised their school performance scores despite BESE raising the bar for the past 2 years. These individual public school systems throughout Louisiana, their teachers and principals are the real reformers. They found something that works, but they're being ignored at this crucial point. Excellence in our public education system has been held at bay for too long by the ever-increasing federal mandates that favor testing over teaching, technology over touch, and standardization over individual empowerment. We can no longer stand back and accept a reform theory that in actuality suppresses the development of critical thinking skills, produce a compliant workforce, rather than the citizenry that can extend their choices from the schoolhouse door to the larger community with the capabilities of contributing to the diverse needs of our society. We ask why a coalition of major professional education organizations in the state, whose schools are already making the grade, are being ignored in their request for a true search for the best superintendent Louisiana can find. Our state deserves the best leader we can find for public education. The Coalition for Louisiana Public Education is adamant in asking that you conduct a legitimate search for a qualified superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berrios. And board members, you have received some written comments from Ms. Berrios also. Thank you. Next is Lee Meyer from Assumption Parish.
My name is Lee. Am I on?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. My name is Lee Meyer. I'm from Assumption Parish School Board. I represent the Assumption Parish School Board as well as the Coalition for Louisiana Public Education. I only have 2 minutes, so I won't let you know the number of people who are represented by the Coalition for Louisiana Public Education. It's extremely lengthy. I want to first of all formally thank Lottie Beebe for having the guts to stand up and voice her opinion. I listened to all of you make your statements, and I heard 2 others who may have wanted to go some other way, but may have other problems doing what they have to do. The state of Louisiana has gone from being an elected superintendent to an appointed superintendent with qualifications to a superintendent who can now be, state superintendent who can now be appointed by waivering all the qualifications that are necessary to be a superintendent of education. We have many superintendents in the audience today who are qualified to be a state superintendent. But all these people now are not called teachers anymore, or you've taken control of the word reformers, and now you've taken the word traditional educators and labeled us as being traditional educators. Walter Lee and I had a conversation on Gene Costanza's radio show the other day. He said that parents want change. 35% of the electorate in the state of Louisiana voted in the last election. 65% of 35% voted for the governor, and less than that voted for the BESE members. He says that we want choice, we want vouchers, and we want charters. Now, I'm going to say something right now that might just set everybody back a little bit. If I give a voucher, and I give a charter, and I give choice, and that money comes out of minimum foundation, and that minimum foundation money follows that student, and that student has to go to a charter, and that charter says, we'll only take you if, or the private school says, we'll only take you if. We're going to separate the haves from the have-nots. And as I said before, the Education Committee in the legislature, we are going back to segregation, and we're going back quickly. We said that we want to be an educational family, and I love Mr. Walter, he's a fine guy. An educational family. Since the election, we've had closed-door meetings with stakeholders in education. Not one of them in the original set was a superintendent.
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Ma'am?
There's a 2-minute limit, and you've gone
Certainly,
beyond
I
to
know
3.
because I'm in opposition. If I was
No,
in-
sir. No,
Oh,
sir.
yes,
I'm going to
I've
be
been here before.
consistent
Well,
with
let me
everyone.
talk about one last thing then.
I'll give you another 30 seconds.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I forgot we were in Louisiana.
No, sir. This is within
There's
the
another
authority.
event that's going on at the end of January. I hope you board members know about it. This is the Family of Education. It's a Leadership for Change event that's being, well, let's say opened by Representative Stephen Carter. Not one educator from Louisiana is on the agenda. Jeb Bush, Howard Fuller, Tony Bennett, I thought he was a singer, Bobby Jindal, Joel Klein, Ben Austin, Scott Shirley, Mark Sternberg, John White. They're going to have to change that from being superintendent of Louisiana Recovery to state superintendent. And the Honorable Stephen Carter. Not one, ladies and gentlemen, is a stakeholder in education. But we want to be a family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Appreciate your comments. The next speaker is Les Landon with the LFT. And then Karen Harper Royal.
Thank you. President Monahan is out of the state and asked me to speak on his behalf today. First of all, congratulations to all of you on your elections and appointments to the board. The LFT is looking forward to working with all of you to provide the best possible education for all the children of our state. If time travel were possible, most of us would like to go back and start this process over again. We'd like to see a process that would respect the right of the governor to make a recommendation of the most qualified candidate for superintendent of education. But that process would also respect the constitutional authority of this board. It would be a process that would search for the best possible candidate and at the minimum post a help wanted ad. It would be a process that would consider qualifications of candidates, and then this board would be allowed to interview and vet the most qualified candidates. Reality tells us that that time has passed us. Unfortunately, the excessive politicization of this process has caused damage. It has damaged the public perception of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. It has sullied the office of the superintendent, and unfortunately, it's placed a cloud on the office of the gentleman who is going to be taking the seat with a display of strong-armed politics. And it has demoralized the core of educators whose mission in life is to teach our children. It could have been better. But we are where we are, and we need to move forward from here. The LFT is ready to work with you openly, transparently, and honestly in the best interests of the children of our state and representing to the best of our ability the professional educators that we represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Karen Harper Royal.
Good afternoon and welcome new BESE board members. As a parent, I believe our children deserve for this board to do a thorough search to make sure that the best candidate for leading this state forward to real education reform is what's necessary. The current recommendation is political, pure and simple. Mr. White, although a nice person, has not presented me, the community, nor this board with a resume that demonstrates that he has the credentials, background, or experience that I believe is necessary to develop and implement the kinds of reforms we really need in Louisiana to move our children forward. Mr. White's experience in the classroom is extremely limited, and his leadership as a deputy superintendent in New York is questionable at best. In fact, most of the New York City public school parents that I have been in contact with have huge concerns with his abilities in terms of parental engagement. I, too, have huge concerns with the sham political and community engagement process that Mr. White has led in his short period of time here in New Orleans. I know, Mr. Garber, you believe that he has some successes in terms of a few things in New Orleans, but when you really dig deeper, you will see that that is just a continuation of the rhetoric of success by his predecessor. Mr. White's accomplishments are not what you believe they are. They are questionable. The reforms many of you believe Mr. White has been successful with are not as positive as you think they are. That enrollment system is very problematic. I had the opportunity to attend a meeting recently about the enrollment system, and it doesn't solve the problems that I brought to Mr. White, not just me, but many other parents. We have a very long way to go in improving our schools. Our children deserve an honest, thorough process, not a political process. I know you believe that expediency is necessary, but it's when we move too quickly that we make the most mistakes. And much of the successes that you think that you are continuing are mostly smoke and mirrors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person is Joyce Haynes with the Louisiana Association of Educators, and then Beth Myers. And then that will end the public comment.
congratulations to John White. He and I are now friends. Did I say so, John? And I also believe that Patrick Dunbar is owed a breadth of attitude, you get it out. But I will
Depth
say
of gratitude.
You are owed much gratitude for what you have no doubt done in New Orleans. For since you left Baton Rouge, I understand that things are starting to change, and I think that you have had valuable experience that you have put forth there as you helped John White and others try to change things. But I also know that things aren't the way they seem, and you've already heard that. So I will just end by saying congratulations, John. You already have the votes. For it's Louisiana and its politics, not Louisiana politics. It is also that you have a BESE board that is bought and paid for, and the votes are already there.
Thank you, Ms.
I'm
Haynes.
totally ashamed of what's happening here today, and I did not deliver my regular speech, but I will say to you that things will change, and we shouldn't even wait for 4 years. I promise you, we'll have our own Wisconsin. Hopefully it won't be in Egypt.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Next, last speaker is Beth Myers.
Hi, my name is Beth Myers. Many of you know me as a recent candidate for the BESE, which I was unsuccessful, obviously. I am a classroom teacher, 20 years in the classroom. I've recently retired. I went on, got my master's, and I'm currently working on my doctorate in educational leadership. And I have worked in the USDOE as a federal intern. I have been witness to reforms. I have worked with National Advocate on reforms. And what we are doing today is affecting me not just as an educator, but as a parent and as a grandparent. That's where I'm really becoming concerned. I still have a child in the public school system. I have 3 that have graduated from the public school system and who are quite successful in their jobs and in their lives. My youngest is for his freshman year in Livingston Parish. But I am concerned about the direction that you are taking with our educational system. Number one, the lack of public notice for this meeting, a little more than a day's notice, does not instill confidence that this board will encourage public education in the policy process. Many of the parents that I spoke to had no idea that this was occurring and could not rearrange their schedules to get here in order to have a chance to speak. The publicly stated reluctance for this board to do a legitimate search for a new superintendent leads me to believe that we're just going to continue not involving the people that are directly in the classroom with the students, and I say continue because it's been going on for quite a while. We will be relegated to periphery of policy processes, a little more than spectators, and I would caution this board to consider the consequences of a hasty decision. I would ask you, have you examined the consequences of the reforms in New York? Have you looked at the growing parental and community unrest in that city right now? In fact, many of their parents and even councilmen have been arrested for protests in the street. Are you aware of the lawsuit that was filed against the New York Board of Education because they refused or allegedly refused to allow...
Ms. Myers, I asked you to wrap it up.
Yes, ma'am. And they were, it was a statutorily guaranteed right of community voice and participation. Are you aware of the co-location lawsuit? And if you're not, you should take time to consider this before making this important of a decision. If you have any information you'd like, including the lawsuits, I do have copies of that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Myers. Board members, that concludes the public comments. So now we go back to the original motion. Is Mr. Garvey.
Call the question, please.
Okay, there's been a called question. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Beebe?
An emphatic no, and I want the minutes to reflect it's no to question 1. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Beebe votes no. Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett votes yes. Ms. Bofi?
Yes.
Ms. Bofi votes yes. Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford votes yes. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey votes yes. Mr. Guillo?
Yes.
Mr. Guillo votes yes. Ms. Hill?
Abstain.
Ms. Hill abstains. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Ms. Orange-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Orange-Jones votes yes. Mr. Romer?
Yes.
Mr. Romer votes yes. Ms. Dastug?
Yes.
Ms. Dastug votes yes. You have 9 yeas, 1 no, and 1 abstention. The
Okay,
motion passes.
the motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. White. You're now the State Superintendent of Education in Louisiana. Would you like to take a moment, just a minute or two, to address the board?
I'll take that as an overture, but an overture to be brief as well. Is that right?
It was.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Well, I of course want to thank you to the board for the opportunity. It is deeply humbling as a career educator to be given the opportunity to positively impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of Louisiana's children, and I take extraordinarily seriously the responsibility that has been put upon me and welcome it. I also want to thank briefly Superintendents Pastorek and Superintendent Tyler, who did so much to lay the foundation that we all now stand upon. And their introduction of me to Louisiana, both personally and professionally, as well as the extraordinary courage that they showed in so many ways on behalf of our youngsters, is so deeply commendable. And I also want to thank the time that people took, including those who opposed the motion, to come today. I look forward to working with all of them, no matter their viewpoints, and recognize that their time to be here is a dedication in and of itself. And so I thank them for being here today as well. As I'll be very, very brief, and we'll shorten my comments, but just a quick vignette. My third day in the classroom, I came home. It was a Friday, and I realized that I had taken a diagnostic of my 9th grade English teachers or students' writing. I was a teacher of 9th grade English at the time. And I looked at their writing, and I went back into my files, and I pulled out my writing, and I found a sample of my writing from when I was in 8th grade. And I looked at it next to the dozens of writing samples that my kids had provided in their first week with me at Dickinson High School. And what I saw is that as tremendous as the opportunity that I have here today is, the real great opportunity of my life was reflected in the writing sample that I pulled out from my 8th grade experience. The complexity, the word choice was representative that someone, and not just one person, but a series of people had dedicated their lives, a series of teachers had dedicated their lives to ensuring that I had the opportunity that would afford me to do whatever I wanted to do with my life, and I'm so privileged to have given back. But my kids' samples reflected that they had indeed not received that. And that is not necessarily to lay the blame on anyone in particular. And it's not to say that everyone hadn't tried as best as they could, but it is to say that we as a society had not done right by my kids. And I was determined to change that. We went a long way toward changing that. People who were doing writing, kids who were doing writing on a 5th grade level that year were doing college level work by the time we ended that. And it is that aspiration, the aspiration for a college degree or a professional career for every Louisianan, that should bring us here today, that should bring us here and into the classrooms of Louisiana every single day that we have God's blessing to do this work. So I want to thank you so much for offering me the opportunity, from the classroom to the school to the district to the State House, to be a part of it, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. White. We're going to move on to the next item on the. I think we're remaining in this item, but there may be a couple of motions that we need to finish this item.
Madam President?
And Mr. Garvey.
I'd like to move that the board approve the contract that has been presented between the Board of Elementary Secondary Education and the State Superintendent of Education, John White.
Is there a second to Mr. Garvey's motion?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Romer. Is there any objection to the motion?
Ms. Dastu,
Ms. Beebe?
when was this set out?
It was given to you. It was offered to be briefed to you this morning. I offered to meet with you to brief with you on it. I didn't receive a response.
Where was the message? What venue?
Through your email this morning.
Ms. Dastu, I had a medical appointment today.
Okay.
I haven't been near my computer, so I'm not in a position to.
Well, you're welcome to abstain or vote against it.
Doing business.
Okay. Thank you. So would you like? So I'm going to. Is there any objection to the motion, Ms. Beebe? Would you like to make an objection? Okay, we have Ms. Beebe objects to the motion. Anyone else object to the motion? Hearing none, motion, okay. Hearing no other objection, motion carries. Next item, or is there another motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make another motion.
Okay, Ms. Bradford.
I move that the board direct that a letter be sent to the governor and to the legislature requesting the Senate confirmation of John C. White as State Superintendent of Education and approval of the salary by the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Bradford. Is there a second? Second, okay. Second by Mr. Aguirre. Is there any objection to this motion?
Yes.
Ms. Beebe would like to be recorded as objecting to the motion. No, no, sir, excuse me. Any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries.
Madam President.
Either one of the two items that you just addressed were on the agenda. You only had on the agenda the approval of the superintendent. Now, I would only want to question two things, if I might.
No, sir, you may not. Thank you. These items are considered to be part of the appointment of the state's, these items are considered to be part of the item of the appointment of the state superintendent. Thank you. Is there any other comments on this item? Hearing none, motion carries.
There's no further business on this agenda.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned.